Hi, I'm Bruce Gordon with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. Today we're talking with Becky White from the State Fire Marshal Division's office. Becky is the fire and life safety educator. And Becky, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
There was a structure fire in Minnesota every 1.4 hours last year. And in the last 5 years, there were fires that were touching the lives of about one out of every 1,000 people. It's a big problem in Minnesota. Do you think people take fire safety messages seriously?
I think people think it will never happen to them. So, they assume, oh, that's too bad that happened over there to those people. And our mission really is to get people to realize fire happens everywhere. It happens to everyone. And, you're really in charge of whether fire is going to happen in your life or not.
Really points to why people need to be educated about fire safety.
Yeah, it does, because people need to know that if they run a fire-safe life, then they're less apt to have a fire.
Is it true that fires have become more dangerous in our homes over the last 30 years?
They have, mostly because of what we're filling our homes with and what we're building our homes out of. So the building construction methods have changed, so the structures aren't as solid as they used to be. And then also we're using a lot more fuel burning furniture and other things to fill our homes with. It's not the solid furniture that used to be in the legacy homes.
What happens in a structure fire? What really happens in a home when it's on fire?
So people think they have a lot of time to escape a fire. Fire moves really slow. People think about their fire pit when they have these big pieces of wood that they start on fire. And like I said, most of the things in our home are built out of, chipboard or other, kind of glued together things, and plastics and things that burn very quickly. But what happens is the fire, it grows very rapidly, and it spreads across the room, across the carpet, up the walls, through the drapery very quickly. So in a matter of 3 to 4 minutes, your house could be, or room could be completely engulfed, and you don't have really the time to get out. So we urge people to make sure that they have a plan before they have a fire.
How long does it take for a little flame to become a big fire?
Fire doubles less than every minute, so really once it gets started, it'll take over the room very quickly in a matter of a minute or two.
People spend a lot of time in their kitchens. It seems like our family gatherings begin and end there, but yet it's one of the most dangerous rooms in our home. Why is that?
Well, because we're there a lot, right? So we spend a lot of our time in the kitchen, and it's where we do a lot of cooking and heating. We have the heating elements there, and there's also a lot of distractions. So people start cooking, and then they run to check the laundry, or the kids are doing something in the other room, and they walk out of the room for just a minute, and it turns out that they've completely forgotten that they had bacon frying on the stove or chicken cooking on the stove, and that very quickly can turn into a fire.
Well, it's Fire Prevention Week nationwide, and here in Minnesota, Fire Prevention Month. And the theme this year is Prevent Kitchen Fires. Very important message.
Absolutely. Half of all of our fires, in structure fires in Minnesota, start in the kitchen. So it is our leading cause, but it's our leading cause by a large margin. So we want to remind everybody to make sure that they're being safe. If you are cooking, you want to stay in the kitchen. If you have to leave the room for any reason, really, it's a good idea to turn off the stove. And move the pan off the burner. Just, if it's only going to be a minute, it's really not that big of a deal for you to do that while you're cooking.
Now, you mentioned kitchen fires are the leading cause of structure fires and home fires. What are some of the other top causes?
Heating and open flame or candles are always number 2 and 3, and they kind of switch place every year. Last year it was heating at 10 or 11%, and open flame was at 9 or 10%. So like I said, the difference between 50% and our next leading cause being 10%, it's a huge leap. But heating, candles, and cooking are all things that are coming up over the next few months, because we're getting holed up in our houses, and we're turning on the furnaces because the weather's getting a little bit cooler, and we're starting the candles because we're decorating for the holidays. So, they're all 3 very important things to keep in mind.
We talk a lot about fire prevention and fire safety. Is there a difference in those terms?
There is a big difference. Fire prevention is really preventing the fire in the first place. And fire safety is about making sure that you're safe and you live a fire-safe life. So a smoke alarm, which is a crucial thing to have in your home to make sure that you survive a fire, the smoke alarm doesn't prevent the fire. It's still very important to make sure that you have them and that you test them and that you replace them every 10 years. But really, it's your behavior and your action that can prevent the fire.
So it's really important that people understand fire prevention and fire safety, know the difference, and take some action steps.
Absolutely, because we'd like you to not have the fire at all, but if it does happen, we want you to make sure that you survive the fire.
What can people do to prevent fires in their homes?
So you need to make sure that you are paying attention while you're cooking. If you're using candles, you want to make sure that you blow them out when you leave the room, or better yet, use a flameless candle. Much easier to replace a battery. And if you are using a fireplace or anything like that, you want to make sure that you close the doors and make sure that it's out before you go to sleep. If you're using campfires or any other outside fire things, you want to make sure that the kids are 3 feet away from that to prevent anything happening to them. And if you're a smoker or you have lighters in your home, you want to make sure that you store them up high and away from kids so that they don't get their hands on them and use them.
So let's talk about smoking for just a moment. It's not a major cause of structure fires, but it is the leading cause of fatalities. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's usually our 5th leading cause of fires in Minnesota, but it is the leading cause of fire fatalities, and that's because smoking, people put the cigarette out or they think it's out, and it can smolder for hours. So if they're smoking outside, which most people are doing these days, they'll put it in a potted plant or something like that, thinking that the dirt will put it out. And really, most of our planters outside have peat moss in them, which has little pieces of wood. So that'll actually smolder under the soil, and then it'll drop out onto the deck and then start a deck fire. Or if they put it out somewhere else or just drop it, it can roll into part of the deck slats or something like that. It'll start a fire, and usually those fires happen hours after people go to sleep. So that's why it's a problem, because people have long since forgotten the cigarette, and that's when the fire starts.
So Becky, you talk to audiences all the time about fire safety, fire prevention. Are there some messages that surprise your audiences?
There are. Usually every audience that I go to, I focus on smoke alarms because smoke alarms really do save lives. And every year in Minnesota, unfortunately, we have a handful of people that die in fires where there's no alarms in the house, or where they have an alarm, but it's not working because they haven't checked the batteries recently. So I encourage every audience that I go to, whether it's kids or adults, to make sure that they're checking the alarms, to make sure the batteries are working, that they replace the batteries at least once a year, and that they replace the whole alarm after 10 years because they're actually less effective after 10 years.
Now, you were telling me before that there were actually dates on the back of the smoke alarms, and that we should be looking at those. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I have an alarm here. So on the alarm, there's a whole bunch of product information that's on here, and usually somewhere towards the bottom, kind of close to the battery compartment, so you can see it when you're changing those batteries, they'll have a date stamped. And this one is stamped 2005, so it's good until 2015. If there is no date on the alarm at all, you can't find one anywhere, then it's probably more than 15 years old, because they started dating them about 15 years ago. And if the date is more than 10 years old, you want to make sure that you get rid of the alarm altogether. And it's really a good idea to make sure that you replace all the alarms in your house at the same time, so that they're all the same vintage.
Excellent. Where can people go to get more information about fire safety and fire prevention?
Our website is a great place to start. It's www.fire.state.mn.us. The National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, has a lot of great resources as well.
Excellent. Becky, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're talking about fire prevention and fire safety with Becky White from the State Fire Marshal Division. Thank you.